Welcome to Marsha's Plate, a Black trans-inclusive feminist podcast. A place where we know that not everybody is invited to the cookout. And we also know that every single day is a brand new day, and we have the power to make a difference today. So let's do this. It's a new day, brand new day, make it better than yesterday. You can always find a way to turn it all around again. It's a new day, brand new day, make it better than yesterday. You can always find a way to start over again. Tuesday, when the sun rises, you can start over again. A new day, you can make it better than yesterday. A new day, it's a new day, new day, new day. There's a way, you can turn it around. Trust me, there's a way out. There's more time. Just don't give up. When the sun rises on a new day, you got another chance. A new day, got another chance. If you want to join the conversation, you can hashtag Marsha's Plate. You can follow us on most social media, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all of that. Just search for Marsha's Plate, MARSHASPLATE. Y'all ready? Let's get started. Hey, what's up, y'all? This is your girl Diamond, and I have somebody that I've been wanting to get on the show since 2019. I think that's when I first got introduced to you. We didn't meet each other, but I got introduced to your music I think at the end of 2019. I think. Or early 2020. Either one of them. Ever since I seen you and I saw you performing The One, in that moment, I was like, oh, this is fire. I need to see everything about her. I need to know what's going on with her, because she's not only is she beautiful, this bitch got a motherfucking voice. And I have been wanting to share you with the audience for a long time. So everybody, I want to introduce one of my favorite trans artists, Neverending Nina.
Thank you for welcoming me. Thank you for having me in this safe space. Listen, I know the icon that is standing and sitting before me. And so, yes, I'm always grateful and thankful that all of my connections are built in or the organic universe providing me those opportunities. And so I'm grateful that when we did exchange physically, and when we first met physically, I'm like, oh shit, this gonna be my good Judy. And so like, because we just vibe like that when you know, like they always say, real recognize real. And so I'm just grateful for this opportunity.
Facts. So Nina is a singer-songwriter. She is an entertainer. She's from the great city of Port Arthur, Texas. I'm down here in Texas doing my thing. But if you can't hear it in her voice, it's by way of New Orleans, Louisiana. So she is currently living in and thriving in Los Angeles, California. And tell me about growing up. Tell me who was loving on you, who raised you, your family unit, all of that stuff. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so thank you. So I grew up in Port Arthur, Texas by way of New Orleans, Louisiana. And so I always include that because my mother's people is from Central Texas, Rosebud, Texas, Waco, Killeen, Temple, all that. And my daddy's people is from Louisiana. They met at Prairie View A&M when they went to undergrad, and then they got married and then moved to Port Arthur, Texas. And so I've always had that South thing of representing Texas as well as Louisiana.
The slack, baby.
Come on now. And so like my upbringing, like Southern Baptist church, my mom is once again church. My mother is Church and God in Christ. My daddy is Southern Baptist.
Glory.
And so I would always tell people like my summers, if anybody is who knows the color purple and that church scene, and when you have all them children looking in the church, and that was my summer on my mama's side with my grandmother, because it was the gravel roads, it was the walking down making leaf cigarettes, it was going to the one convenience store, and their sodas at that time was 25 cents a soda, a canned soda. So, that for me when I was younger, that was the tea. Like, oh my God, give me $1. I'm going to get everything at the store. But that was the gist of having that balance of Southern hospitality, still recognizing my queerness, but knowing the levels of how I could show up. And so I'm thankful that in that upbringing, it was immersed in music. It was immersed in Black culture. It was immersed in those things that a lot of us as Black individuals universally understand. And so the beauty of that is like, I still had recognized my uniqueness, but I still made sure that I operated, I wouldn't even say coast, but I would just get in where I would fit in, because I knew, okay, these people are not going to understand me. They're going to provide certain things for me as much as they can, but it is my own unique adventure to understand and learn to understand who I am and how I show up in my family dynamics and in the social structures and the school settings and all that. So of course I was immersed in the arts, because I realized that was a safe space for me. And so that's why I realized like no one could take that from me. And so that is what has cultivated me in understanding who I am as a person presently.
I remember growing up in the culture church as well. And I know at my church, all the cishet straight acting boys got all the love. But me being the queer one, it was always police. Sit down, stop acting like a girl. Don't be switching. All this kind of stuff, just really policing, trying to, stomp the femininity out of me. But me being able to sing and being able to actually, get on stage, that's where I can actually let me get all the attention that I get, because I know that these other raggedy, ashy ankle niggas can't sing like me. And so it gave me some room to kind of get some type of semblance of attention and love and, the stuff that as a child you really look into. But for me, the way you just described it is a very mature way to think about it. Was that innate in you growing up, or did that is that a reflection as you are an adult of what you were doing at that young age when it comes to knowing that, I got to get in where I can fit in?
It was innate. Mm-hmm. It was innate. I have always, that's why most people who see me now when I use the coin or the thing that I do, hashtag Nina Knowledge, that's exactly what it is. It's my thought, my view, my research from my lens of looking at everything outside of me, knowing that I'm different, knowing that, how I show up might mess with people's mind in different ways, but I'm okay with that. And so that long history of experience in navigating that since I was a little child, because I have an oldest sister, then a middle brother, then me. And so I had those two examples from the gendered perspective of how my mother and father treated my brother, how my mother and father treated my sister, and then how they treated me without verbally telling me that I'm different, and unique. But it was some ways that I would already catch on of like, well, they did that with my brother, but they didn't talk to me about that. Or they did that with my sister and they didn't talk to me about that. And so I'm like, oh, so they know something I don't know. They didn't know how to tell you. So you had to figure it out on your own. And so that was the journey of like, respectfully, I knew how to still respect my parents' household at the time before they separated. But at the same time, I was like, okay, as much as I can, I will go on my own exploration. And so that was the journey.
of understanding how to actually understand me and my own personhood, but still recognize its levels. Like you can only do so much if you're not paying your own bills, if you're not having your own job, if you're not having your own car, if you're not having your own. And so my parents let me know that, and so that sparked within me like, oh, okay, but then I got to get my own job.
Yeah. So tell me about navigating that space and growing into living your truth. How did that start to come about?
I think I understood that nobody was going to do it for me. And so I just recognized I had to start with it. I had to start that journey. And so I knew that the main thing that my family always taught me was about education. And so I made sure that I excelled in education, because at least that's the one thing that they wouldn't say was a queer thing or was a othering thing or that made you look different. No, in society, it is taught to us that, you know, if you are a good person, you got to have good grades, you got to have good, standings in your school setting, because basically that's like to me, I always thought it was like the first level of how society interacts with each other is in the school setting. You have those ones that everybody looks to, then you have the ones that be minding their business, then you have the computer geeks, then you have the theater. So it's together, but it's still sectioned off. And so thankfully in understanding that, I was in a lot of those spaces still being me in certain levels, trying to figure that out.
Did you have any growing up friends that were queer? Because I know sometimes in rural areas, sometimes you can be like a loner because there's not a lot of us in those areas.
Now that you say that, if I did, it was more so in the women or young, girls who were more masculine presenting.
Yeah.
The
the lesbians, the dykes, honey.
No, the jocks. But they was the
basketball player fish. They always got their hair relaxing back in a ponytail.
A free-flowing ponytail.
Right.
But most of my friends, and then I think the thing that saved me, was that it was because of my energy. It was because of I'm cool with everybody. And of course I'm goofy. I like to laugh, I like to clown, I like to just be, as much as I can, I like to be in a joyous space. And so I always recognize that helped me navigate in those spaces without getting bullied, without getting, they knew the queerness, but they still was like, oh my gosh, it's so funny. And so, of course, maybe that was the thing in my tool belt that I was like, okay, but at least if they don't call me a sissy, a punk, a fatty, or anything like that, they know I can make them, I can laugh, I can see the comical view of certain situations that happen in our high school, middle school, elementary experience. And so I think that's, having those individuals, we were all like that. But it was more so, I was always with the girls because I was the girl. And so that was the gist of that. I had friends who were boys, and that was the beautiful thing about my experience, is that they didn't necessarily have a definition, but they treated me just like my constituents. They treated me just like the women, the little girls in high school and middle school. They treated me just like that. They couldn't put words to, why they was doing it, but they just felt the energy of like, no, that's not a boy. So I don't know how I'm gonna get with that, but I'm gonna make sure I respect it as much. And so they would leave me alone in that capacity for the ones who didn't understand.
So as you got older, how did your artistry started to grow? Like as far as like getting into music. Now, of course, we grew up in church, so that's just a part of what goes down. So just like any classic artist, you grow up in church and you go through the training ground of how to sing, using your vibrato, projecting, and all the practice that church gives you. But how
to me, I know me personally, and you may not have went through this, but to me, as I got older, following the musical dream started to be such a direct clash with my transness, my queerness, that it stopped being a dream anymore. And so tell me how that continued to grow in you and how you overcame that particular obstacle.
Like I said, when I was younger, I knew that the arts were my safe space. Any kind of art. And so I made sure that I was an open vessel to trying things out. I knew I was a natural dancer. I was, in middle school, I was in the band. So the two main things that stuck out were I was always in band and I was always in choir. And so from middle school, even from elementary school, they didn't really have like in that format of type choir structure, choral structure. But going into high school, it was I was in band and I was in choir. And so I was doing some small pieces of plays and stuff like that in my hometown, high school, Abraham Lincoln High School, LHSM. And so having that experience in all those spaces allowed me to understand, like, oh, you have it. You just got to know how you want to hone it. You got to know what areas you want to shine in. Because even in band, I was the head, I used to play the saxophone.
I'm jealous because my mama couldn't afford a saxophone and I wanted to play the saxophone so bad, but she couldn't afford it or rent it. Oh, I was so bad.
Exactly. I ain't played it. I just like the way it looked.
Yes. I liked it because Lisa Simpson played it.
And that too. And so I always think it was like, before I knew what I would hear from saxophone, it was like, it was a freedom. I heard saxophonists from jazz people, and so they would just do all this. And so I interpret that as freedom. I was like, oh, well, shit, this is the instrument I want to play. And so I understood that, and then also I interpret that also with my voice. And so I realized the connection of that instrument and then my own instrument. And I was like, that was the way I navigated in that space with band as well as with choir. In choir, they knew that I had a unique sound. They knew that I could do all the parts respectfully. And they knew that naturally I could hear and sing and interpret music, at a far greater rate than everybody else. Thankfully, I was surrounded by other individuals who had that gift as well. And so for that community and in high school, we were known for our choir and for our band. And so I excelled in both. And so that was another way of, once again, we talk about the bigger picture of our queer space and how queer people usually have to be doing something. They have to do hair, they have to, sing good, they have to direct the choir, they have to do it. And then people be like, okay, I want to see the other stuff that you do. And we sometimes know that, but then I registered that at that time to like, oh, okay, well, at least they won't bully me because they know I'm excelling in this. Like, so it was like a bartering system per se at that time to say, I'd rather you know me for this than to start questioning why I ain't never had a boyfriend, or why I ain't never had a girlfriend, or why I ain't, at that time. And so that's when I really started to hone my own things. So I had that at school, and then when I would get home, it was where the imagination kicked in, when I would hear certain voices on the radio, certain voices on the TV, certain voices in movies that registered me as far as singing. I'm like, oh, well, I could sing along right with them. Oh, okay, girl. All right, you can sing. I mean, so that was the space of navigating that and saying, oh, okay, wow, this is how this started. And it just came naturally. And so I wanted to make sure that I kept honing that. And so that's what led me to start doing the internalized work. Okay, well, uniquely, you have your own sound, your own voice, your own thing. keep working on it, because you're going to get to a place to where they're going to truly recognize that the masses and the community and people and all like that. So that's where I am today, of like, no, all those predecessors and people that came before me, as far as my inspirations, my school teachers, my choral instructors, my drama teachers, all those things played a part in understanding my gift as far as me vocally.
I guess for myself, I grew up around great fucking singers. So I grew up with my cousin Kiki Wyatt, and anybody who knows Kiki know that bitch can blow out of her motherfucking mind, and it's fucking, it's on a whole other level. It ain't, you know what I'm saying? So it never was this moment of anybody around her who was also singers. You knew you couldn't sing like Kiki. Because that bitch been a beast since fucking 7. She's been a beast. So you really just gotta learn how to get in where you fit in. How does your voice? What's the harmonies you gonna do? What's the how y'all gonna do this?
Fall in line.
You know, fall in line. And so, but because you know, once you know, early on, you know, before you go through puberty, your voice, you know, you can do a lot more of the feminine stuff. You know, I used to be able to hit the Mariah Carey notes. I used to be able to do that, but then once puberty hit, it shifts, honey. Testosterone says bop 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 bop, mink 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 to the motherfucking vocal cords. And you know, you become unique. But also, because we are not trying to sound like a Gerald Levert or you know, sometimes you know, all these kind of very, very masculine, you know, even Luther Vandross sometimes, some of these very, very masculine singers, while they are amazing singers, as a queer boy coming up, I wasn't trying to mimic them. I was trying to mimic the Brandys, the Kikis, the you know, the Karen Clark Shears, the Kim Burrells. Those are even the Anita Bakers and you know, Jill Scotts and those people. So when you come up and even that part of your voice is being trained to do that, you have a very unique mixed feminine and masculine voice that you can pull from, where, you know, I can deliver a song in a very, very unique way that, you know, some other people can not. And so I had to learn how to accept that. And so how did you do that?
I think it was those recognitions when I would hear the radio and interpret the song just like I heard on the radio, without restriction or restraint, not a strain on trying to reach. It was just that space of like, oh. And this was, I think, like you said, with church upbringing, you stuck to tenor, alto, soprano. You didn't know how to bring on the ad-libs and the far as when I was younger, we didn't necessarily say, oh, well, just do a run. Or they did at church where I was at, we didn't do that just yet. I think it's when I got into high school and they allowed us to really showcase the uniqueness of our own signature voices, is where I understood like, oh, I can do the Whitney Houstons. I can do the renditions of Anita Baker's song. I can do the renditions of, because it was always me. So I was like you, I didn't want nothing to do. I could recognize the male singers, respect for them. But my whole viewpoint was, okay, let me see what Anita gonna do. Let me see what Whitney doing. Let me see, you know, what Patty doing. Let me see what all the counterparts is. If I can reach that, then I got a fighting chance. So it was always in that space of just me, myself, recognizing that in my room, going over there, practicing over there, see how they feel, how they make me, and it felt good to me. And so that was the understanding of like, oh my God, like you got this voice. And then the great thing about that too is like, yes, my people, they're singers, but they didn't necessarily like helped me cultivate my singing. They were inspiration because I saw them singing in the choir. I saw them. They didn't sit down and say, let's have singing lessons every day. They didn't do that with me. It was me recognizing it for my own self and saying, okay, well, let me watch Whitney. Let me watch Prince. Let me watch Michael Jackson. Let me watch Brandy. Let me watch Aaliyah. Let me watch all these people, on my own merit to say, okay, if you want to be an artist, you have to be something like that. Or if somebody give you a mic, you better know what to do with it when they give you a mic. And, and so that's the thing that I recognize now, that I was always in training camp. In my room, I had my TV. At that time, my VCR player. I would record certain videos and stuff like that, and I would look at the videos or look at the live performances. And they know in my household that at a certain time, you would hear that same structure of that recorded over and over again, because I would be practicing live performing. I would be looking at the nuances of how Whitney stood, and how when she wanted that vocal moment, she stopped everything else and she would make sure she centered so she could give you that vocal moment, and then she'd go back to her two-step. Like she was, it's just those general nuances of knowing how to navigate your vocal capacity, and then also honing it and making it your own. And so that's why I'm thankful for that they allowed it, even though I don't know if they recognize it, but I recognize it that they allowed me space to actually cultivate it on my own. And so that's the beauty of my whole experience, is that a lot of it was cultivated on my own, so nobody can take it away from me.
I remember my grandfather, while he was, like the patriarch, he was also somebody that introduced me to other genres of music outside of R&B, outside of gospel. He introduced me to the ladies of jazz. When we think about Billie Holiday, Sarah Vaughan, Ella Fitzgerald, those people, he introduced me to those people because my mama was a young hood chick. She was listening to Keith Sweat, Tupac, Public Enemy, hip hop greats. You get what I'm saying? And R&B that was just kind of coming up and not like the old school. And so he introduced me to the jazz greats. So it was interesting to hear how Sarah Vaughan turned a phrase, how the different quality in Billie Holiday's voice that didn't sound like other singers. And then Ella, just the skillfulness of her scatting and just how she sounded like an instrument. And then, you get what I'm saying? And then I come into my teenage years, and then I get introduced. This is also when the grunge and the alternative rock, the new alternative rock started to come up. So people like Alanis Morissette, and how that Jagged Little Pill album was fucking, it just was crazy when it came out. And so for me, especially for my pen game, I'm a songwriter. I love writing songs. So the way she conveyed some of the pain in her youth, some of the circumstances with men, and all the things that she was growing up dealing with at that time, that fucking album is one of the greatest albums of my particular life, along with some of the black greats. And you get what I'm saying? So for me, and then we from the South, so we are not separated from country music. Unlike when you I grew up north, but my family from the South, so listening to country music was total normal for us. So hearing Reba McEntire, hearing Winona Judge, the Judds, and Patsy Cline, and hearing some of these, and Dolly Parton, and hearing some of these great country artists was not abnormal to my family. So whereas some people, they like, oh, that's white people music. I'm like, no, baby, these bitches can blow. You tripping. And then you fast forward to the Dixie Chicks coming up. So I had all of the influence outside of my normal R&B gospel vibe that I normally have. Tell me about your influences coming up and, you know, outside of gospel, R&B, the typical stuff that, you know, that you would think that we do. Who are some of your influences outside of that?
So, of course, it was in the classical space. I recognize the freedom in classical music and recognize the history of it. And it just was mesmerizing to me of like, wait, so people used to just come to this place. At that time, it wasn't a symphony hall, you know, I'm thinking about way back when. And I was like, people would sit and just listen to the structured pieces of music, then add on voice, then add on theater, then add on. And so that's the thing really struck me with classical music. I love the avant-garde, eclectic vibe of jazz music in the stuff that was not stuff that you would hear like played on jazz radio and all that kind of stuff. It was just like those really elongated, improvised, structured pieces of music that you would know that this person really was freestyling. And they was doing it with their instrument.
Like Coltrane.
Yes. And so, of course, the beginnings, you always gifted in gospel and R&B and all that stuff, but it was more so me doing the research with classical, more so me doing the research with, at that time I was a big, of course it was earlier, but at that time I was a big fan of Shania Twain. And I just understood like, how she merged pop, but kept it with that twang, but at the same time, she kept her femininity. And then she still adhered to the queer space. And it was all that stuff, like just, it just like enthralled me and made me so wanted to explore more. One of my major outside of Black influences is Celine Dion. Like,
Beast.
When you talk about learned and knew the assignment and know the assignment, like she's gonna stand there and give you a vocal. She's gonna stand there and give you a presentation and say, did you understand what I just did with my voice? Did you understand why I held that note that long? Did you understand?
Why I flipped it with why I'm giving you this Melissimo baby.
I gave you that pure tone for 10 seconds and 20 seconds. And then go into a run because I know that's what's going to get some of my people. Come on. But it was the beauty. Yes, it was the beauty of understanding the certain nuances. And you spoke to like Sarah Vaughan. When I first heard Sarah Vaughan, it was just like the deepness, the sort of the rasp, sort of the taking your time. Like she didn't care if her song was 8 minutes. Or whatever her interpretation of the song was 8 to 10 minutes. She gonna sit and work that thing out. And so that made me recognize, okay, you can have a radio sound, but then when you get in a live space, you know, you have to add certain things to it. Then if you go to a intimate concert setting, you know that you can add some instrumentation or some improvisation to it to where those people will understand, oh no, this bitch just don't sing it right. Oh no, she's an art. For the people who are differentiated in that, so I have sections understanding how we navigate in music. It's like they'll think like, oh, just because you're pretty, or just because you could do a two-step, or just because you don't know nothing about improvisation. You don't know nothing about writing your own music. And it's like, no, bitch, get me in that motherfucking room, get me in that space. Give me all those opportunities that I can show you what I do outside of you having a bias towards me because I am an open Black trans woman. And so that's what I pride my training in. Is like, yeah, I already know you probably gonna have certain biases towards me because of how I show up. That's not my stuff. But I bet you me, if you give me that mic, or if you give me that platform, or if you give me that time and that 10-minute segment to do what I need to do, I'm gonna change some parts in mind. Because like, oh my God, like, oh, she like that, and I'm like, yes, I'm like that. And so that's the space that I was more so particularly attracted to, was the classical opera space, and understanding like certain power in how you would project and how you would just give that note the space that it needs, and to understand the nuance and the subtlety of jazz presentation. Then, of course, going into that soul stirring type thing when it comes to gospel, understanding how you would show up in your hip hop. It's just about the nuance and the cadence of it. It's like that's when I really sit back and look at that, I'm like, oh my God, I've been trained all my life to show up how I show up for myself in my art.
So those are some of the artists that, we name it artists that are kind of like, cisgendered. What are some queer influences that you had? So for me, I'm good, and this is somebody who, when I listen to you, I hear, and I don't know if I hope this is not offensive, but I don't think it will be. But I hear Sylvester in your voice. When I hear a recording of you, I'm like, not all songs, but it's certain, but particularly, what's that first song on the EP? Soul, baby. When that first came on, I'm like, oh, this is giving like if Sylvester was doing a neo soul album, baby. This is what it's giving me. And so that is somebody who it really, really influenced me and growing up. And people, I felt that he was queer, even though he was closeted. That damn Luther. That damn Luther. When we think about Michelle Indiocello, when we think about people don't talk about him. People don't talk about her that much, and I apologize for misgendering her in this moment. But when I'm thinking about my past, and so back in the day, she hadn't transitioned at this point. But the lead singer in Anthony and the Johnson, Anthony Haggerty, she is now trans. And 50, and she's from England, and she moved here to the United States in 1981, which is my birth year. And she was one of the first trans artists who I was like, oh, you actually, and it was way early on, like 90s, 2000s. You know what I'm saying? I was like, you out here singing with symphonies, and you just really out here. And most recently, she did this sickening ass version of Beyonce's Crazy in Love, but in her way. I'm gonna have to send it to you. She fucking killed it. She fucking killed it. And so she's about 50 years old. She's been around a long time. And so I want to hear about who are some of your queer influences when it comes to musicality and why.
Of course, I would recognize. I don't want to be disrespectful to their artistry, but I knew I wasn't that, but I still recognized that it was art. So that in that space, it was the first thing I recognized was RuPaul.
Facts, bitch. Facts. Can't take it away. You better work. It wasn't my team, but we know what it was.
I felt the visual. And then when I heard that they could keep a note, when I heard that they understood like the certain nuances and playing with the vibe, and I was like, oh, okay. And once again, I don't know because they're not here, but I looked at Prince as one of those queer influences.
Facts.
Because it scared me. I remember my first visceral reaction of like, when I saw, I think it might have been Kiss. When the one visual, when I first saw, heard anything about Prince, I saw Kiss. And I was like, wait. And so I had to make sure I was looking at the video again. Like, wait, but is that what? Okay, but
yeah, mine was Prince. This nigga running around with Apollonia Child, and I'm looking like, you was trying to be, girl, what? It would confuse me, but I was like,
it confused me, but it like made me want to know more.
Right.
Because it also in the same like vein of complexion. I was like, well, is that how people look at me? You know, and I was like, is that what they talking about what I'm gonna grow up to be? And, you know, and then I was like, it's undeniable that they just didn't die. It's undeniable that they are showstoppers. And so I was like, okay, well, if anything, let me do my research. And then with Sylvester, when I started getting into Sylvester, I was like, oh, so this is, this I already felt the thing in the church aspect,
yes,
all that theatrical aspect. I felt it all when I heard them at that time, and still to this day when I listen to them, and I'm just like, yo. And then they were doing, and then the history of it that, of course, the media didn't put eyes on them, like talking about it, like, but they were doing their thing nationally and internationally, and so it was like, oh, okay, this is, if they gonna label me something, they gonna know how to fucking sing. They gonna know how to write. They gonna know how to, and so for me, I just looked at, I don't think I really recognized the queerness per se, unless it was like maybe striking, to where I would recognize like, that's a queer artist. You know, I would always draw from any artist, particularly Black artists, that pulled from me. That made me go and understand who they were. Like Janet helped me understand my queerness and my sexuality and like Janet really helped me. When I heard on that Janet album and Throb came on,
Velvet Road.
I said, oh, this is me. I was like, this community. And it tapped in because I know that I'm a sensual creature. I know that I'm a sensual being. I know that I attract people's curiosity in how they show up for me. And so she helped me put words to that, put emotions to that, put feelings to that. Whereas her brother, Michael, showed me about showmanship, showed me about you are the only one. And so use that as your advantage to know that, no, yeah, somebody might have did the same thing a few minutes ago, but they didn't do it like you. And so that was I wouldn't necessarily look at like understood or taking in queer artists. I just looked at everybody in that space of putting me in that same situation, so they would automatically be queer, if that makes sense. Like it was like, okay, well, I'm watching them, so I know I'm queer. I'm gonna see how I can be queer in the level that they're at, and how would I do it. And so that's what would be part of my examples in that aspect. But I don't think I really could pull. I'll think more on that, but the more striking I would pull that represented was, of course, RuPaul, Sylvester, and then, of course, Michelle Cello, and all those spaces. But it's just like I didn't necessarily view it in that space at that time.
For me, I think when I think about artists that really stood out, I named a few earlier, but another one's, as you're speaking, Katie Lang, Melissa Etheridge, or ain't that how you say
Etheridge?
Even I wouldn't. Well, she's queer now, but at the time I registered her as queer. Da Brat was somebody who, it was actually the first album that I bought with my rap album that I bought with my own money. The Funkdafied album, so Funkdafied. That album was the first album that I bought with my own money, because she was so this masculine girl, and so to me that was gender bending. And although she wasn't out in queer, I was reading her as queer down. Another person who was doing something unique for me that was pushing the envelope in how R&B guys can present themselves, that motherfucking Rasan Patterson. Patterson really, I picked up queerness from him, and he is a queer man, but even though he wasn't publicly out, just how he presented, he was somebody who I just immediately was like, oh, this is a queer guy. Like he's giving me that kind of vibe. And so just the way he sings, remember what I was talking about earlier, how there is a way that when you are a biological male voice that has been influenced by girls, we sound a certain way. And so in that regards, I could hear it in how he sings and how he interprets a song. He does not mind playing up in the raptures and giving you a sickening falsetto and, you know, doing something that is unique in a more soft and feminine way that other male singers, they didn't do that. They want to sound like the Gerald Leverts and that deep baritone masculine, or even a masculine tenor. Is very seldomly that you're gonna they're not gonna be playing in their falsetto in a certain kind of way. Only person that I know personally that I think kind of straddles that line, if it would be like a Usher. You get what I'm saying? It's still on that masculine level, but he plays with his falsetto and plays with his riffs and runs in a way that is kind of unique to Usher. You know, and of course nowadays we have more. So like when you think about Avery Wilson, when you think about, you know,
Michael Kilgore.
Yeah, those people. But back in the day, like 90s, 80s, for us growing up, the dudes weren't they were trying to sound like Teddy Pendergrass. They were trying to, it was a masculineness to it that they were doing. And even when they were trying to do their falsetto, it was mimicking like you know, like a Prince. It was really adore you. It was giving you the Bilal, it was giving you the D'Angelo, it's giving you the Maxwell, which were amazing voices, but it still didn't have the feminine quality. Yeah. And so that was somebody, those were some of the people were signed, the Brat, that, you know, that my queerness really just was like peaked and was like, oh, okay, well, I can do shit this way. And so me watching you for the first time that I actually watched you perform, was I was hired to host with T.S. Madison, the Transgender District Winter Gala, and I was able to see you perform at that. Then to see you, when I saw you live, the very first time that I saw you live, you were hired to perform at House of Tulip. They threw like a summer concert in New Orleans that you performed, and that was my first time seeing you live. The vibe was fire. Love that. And so seeing a trans woman, now this is me. I'm a little bit older than you. How old are you?
I'm 40.
Oh, we the same age. Oh, bitch, girl, child. We the same age. So me coming up, I was always scared because I'm trans. Trans was always an obstacle. And anytime I would try to pursue some type of music situation, I would come across predators, just like cisgender girls when it comes to, you know, oh, I'll let you come record in my studio and da 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 da. I ain't even gonna charge you, but honey, when I get in there, honey, you ain't even focused on the music that I'm trying to do. You ain't even focused on nothing. You trying to get me just to come. So I'm not charging you like the rest of the trans girls that's fucking trying to charge you. And so it would never pan out until something good. Then I met this white dude who let me come when I came to Houston back in 2012, 2013. He actually was not on no sexual bullshit, and he let me come and record some songs, and that was a wonderful experience. But then his ass moved to California, so I couldn't really get him like I wanted to. And so it was always like a dream deferred for me. I always, you know, I've always been a songwriter, I've always been a singer, and I've always created. So seeing somebody like you, Shea Diamond,
Jayla Sims.
Yeah, Jayla Sims, when she won the P. Diddy thing. Yes, seeing y'all out here doing your thing, it really just kind of put a new life in my creativity and my confidence in my voice. And I was like, oh, these girls are really out here doing it. So seeing you perform was so amazing to me. So tell me about how, you know, you see yourself as a groundbreaking artist. Tell me how is it navigating the artistry, navigating your artistry, navigating the industry as a Black trans woman? What are some of the obstacles? What's happening?
Woo! I just love how you bring it to that point, and then viewing that, because as you speak, I'm looking at all of the experiences in your words. I'm like, oh my God. And so that goes back to, like I said, I've always been trained. I was always in training. At that time, it was just a training aspect of just being an artist. As I got older and understanding more of my presentation, I knew I had to extend my training. And so I knew that this would get me in the room. That's before I knew it. I knew the levels of passability. I knew the levels of my words, my mouth, my intellect would get me in the room. In those rooms, particularly talking about music spaces. Because that's the other challenging thing, is that they don't necessarily like a strong, independent Black woman in the music space. And so I had to then recognize that as well. Like, well, girls, are you going to be docile, or are you just going to go politely but respectfully bust through that door and be like, well, look, this is who I am, and this is what I bring, and so for that, I always lead with my talent first and foremost in anything that I navigate in the music industry, in the music entertainment industry. You're gonna see that talent is there, and so my job is to, if you see the talent, but then you saying, oh, I don't know if I can fuck with her because she's trans. I don't know if I can give her that studio time or work with her because she's trans. I'm gonna make you see that bias to understand, oh, well, everybody else got their thing. And like I said, not to put it in the space of everybody else got their thing, but it's like, well, if you could mess with them and give them opportunities, and you know that I'm not hurting or harming anybody, all I want to do is get after my dream, and you are that person who possibly might be a gatekeeper or a person who has that access to power to then help me advance my dreams. And then you say, oh no, just because of my existence, I say to turn away and look away, even though you understand that I'm talented than a motherfucker, even though you understand that I can vocally be in the same spaces as everybody else that are known to be vocalists and singers and stuff like that. So it's just because of my trans identity. And so that's the thing that I knew when taking upon this journey. I'm glad that I got that, also that understanding of the higher education in my HBCU, Dillon University out of New Orleans, Louisiana, that was the focus of me with my degree. I got my degree in business management and music. And so it showcased you being in the studio, you being looking at different documents regarding how you show up and knowing how to write different contracts, or knowing how to ask for what you want for your writers, knowing all these certain things that as an independent artist I use now, you know, and regardless of how I'm getting booked, how I, you know, show up, my presentation, what I want for my show, how I want, what can I execute in that timely manner. And so all that came from knowing that I was different, knowing that I was going to be a proud Black trans woman, knowing that I wasn't going to sugarcoat that, knowing that I was going to go through those doors. Because I look at, and that's once again going back to RuPaul, like, of course you started with music, but you wasn't a Black trans woman. And we didn't, at that time, I didn't know. I could not have the wherewithal to pull up. I didn't have access either to, because of course younger, to pull up, to search for any example in it. And so with that knowing, I was like, fuck, this means I gotta do this by myself. Like, they already gonna not give me space. I can't go to the Black people. I can't go to the white people. I can't go. So I gotta make sure that I, as best as I can, show up for myself in presentation, in vocal ability, in talent, so that when I do get allotted whatever opportunity, they're gonna be like, oh, well, she good. And so that's the thing that I've always kept centered in this journey. And I'm thankful that everything that everyone can see has been brought to me, or I have navigated organically. But I do know that once I'm in that room, it's time to get to work. It's time for me to allow you to check your biases to understand, well, why is it taking me so long when I have everything else that everybody else have, as far as to get on in the music industry, or to get that mentor who is already a Grammy Award winner, who is already have a #1, who already wrote for any and everybody. Why can't you allot me those opportunities? And most of the time, it's always because of how I show up. And they don't tell me that; they show me that. So independently, I knew, okay, Mama, you gotta have resources to provide you the capital to keep invested in your dream. You gotta make sure that when you put stuff out, it is of quality. And so it has to match the people who have the majors. And so that's what I'm always envisioning. Even though I don't let it get to me as much, but I'll make sure that when you pull up Neverending Nina and you see that the single title, it's gonna give you, oh, we swear who on our team for marketing, or who made it, or who did this for this video. It's like, yes, that's what I'm making sure that until that time comes that I have that team who understands the vision and wants to join along with that. I make sure that I'm representing for the actual child who was just like me in that room, who didn't see an example of a Black trans woman literally singing with a live mic.
Right.
Live.
On.
Yes.
On. Mic on and
Okay.
up. So not only was it like Predators, but it was like almost like as an artist you forced to be independent because nobody want to take a chance on you as a trans artist. Yeah, if you a drag queen, maybe. If you are closeted gay man, sure, maybe we can do that. But you trying to be a woman? Nah, we can't take that. We can't do that. And then because the artist, the business is about money, and so it's like, how are we gonna get a return on this investment if motherfuckers is judging you as a trans woman? And y'all, if you talk about if you listen to y'all trans women, y'all always talk about people judging y'all and da 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 da. So how is this gonna be lucrative for me if I invest it? And so it's always an obstacle for me when I think about it's always obvious to me when I see the artist that has been out here. When did Jayla win the Diddy?
That was almost 10, 12 years ago.
Yeah. And so, when I think of, now don't get me wrong, she done got Grammy, she done wrote for Faith and tons of other people. She's definitely in her career. She's in her career. Yes. But we know she's a beast, and why is she, not headlining all the motherfucking prides? Why is she not, you get what I'm saying? There, even in our own spaces, people are not giving us chances.
Speak on it, Diamond. Speak on it.
Not giving us opportunities. Now, look, I saw you performing because a trans woman, Arya Saeed and Mariah from House of Tulip, they created this platform for all these trans artists. But we've been around here. It's a lot of us been around and doing our thing. We started it. So why are we not being headliners and being put on the stage and all that kind of stuff? Unless we're and then it's like, and then we also get pigeonholed too, because a lot of, when they do give us a chance, we got to do fucking dance music. We got to do those type of, you feel what I'm saying? It's like we got to Vogue, we got to it gets real weird.
And that's what, for me, I always made sure that I look in that aspect. I looked at my R&B, soul, pop counterparts. I look at my people across the board of like, oh, what are they doing? One of my major, influences, of course, has been for a minute, is Jasmine Sullivan. And I'm like, she's already setting herself up to be a pillar in the structures of musicality, leading with the pen, leading with the vocal, and leading with the pen. And so that was, I made sure, because of course, being a, at that time, just a child, didn't know how to fully voice myself like you. I understood my pen. I understood my thought process. I literally thought that what I was hearing melody-wise in my mind, that all singers hear that. I was like, oh, that's because you're singing here. And then when I was in the studio one time and somebody said, how you coming with these like structures and all that sounds? I was like, well, you don't hear that? As a singer, you don't hear it. And they was like, no, if I would hear it, I wouldn't ask you. And I recognized then, like, oh, this is uniquely a part of my gift that I know how to interpret. I can hear one line of a melody, and then I can add a hook to that. And then I could hear a conversation, or I could bring back a conversation that I remembered and then word it freshly to that melody line, and then jazz it up because I can stack, because I can do different parts, because I can. It was all that stuff that I was taught university that everybody could do. And then when I really sat with, because once again, my people they understood that I was a singer, but they did not enforce or really dive deep into, like, per se, oh, I'm gonna get you in the vocal training, I'm gonna get you in it was none of it. My training was in school choir, in a church choir, in my own time, and then I expanded it on my own merit. And so I would always think, like, well, did they do that because they knew I was different? And it was just like, oh, child, I'm not going to invest too much in it because I don't know how they're going to show up. And, it was just all that stuff that come into question. But at the same time, I'm still going to choir practice. I'm still trying out for this thing. I'm still reaching out to this person. I think far as not presently, that's why everything I've been a part of, it was because of this and his mouth. And it was like, because of, hey, you're going to see me and you're going to recognize that these people have been out here paving the way, even before me. They have some dope queer artists that we now just are finding out, even in our own space. And go back what you were saying, like, even in our own spaces, the LGBTQIA plus spaces, and, we have this amazing community of, all these pride circuits and all this stuff. That should be one of the main breads and avenues for queer artists, our own. But we always are catering, the people in the power and positions are catering towards that cishet normality of always getting these big artists. Okay, you got to get the big artists, but they only come there for the check. I'm in community, and so what you will do and build within me is that I will always go out and be that advocate. I would always go out there and be that person to say, hey, that trans person is looking at TV or looking at on a digital space and don't see them represent. I know that I can be there, and I know I am there for that individual because it wasn't there for me. And so it's always baffling in this journey because that's what I battle with. Like, I've worked hard to be everything that in this industry that you have to be, media training, vocal ability, talent, know how to put yourself together, professionalism, all these things. But the one thing that I cannot change, they don't even verbally tell me that they shun me for it. They show me because they know. They'll come in my DMs and say, oh, you are a great artist. But I'm like, but don't you know that radio is in New York to put my music in the playlist? If it touched you so much, can't you just tell your friend like they did for you years ago to say, oh, well, add this song or listen to this song? And yes, certain people show up for me in that capacity, but at the same time, I know some don't, is because I show up as a powerful Black trans woman.
Another element that I gotta shine a light on us as artists too. Like, I don't think we collab with each other enough. I think everybody is trying to be a Beyonce and not pulling together and doing, like, I would love to hear you and J-Lo on the song. I would love to see just all the art, all the shit. You, Shayla, and Shia Diamond. Like, I feel like that'll fucking be so fucking hard. And so what I'm seeing is, I know y'all are out here grinding and doing your thing, but even if it's just doing, you know, music with each other, I feel like that is not being done enough. Because like I said, everybody trying to be Beyonce. And so instead of collaboration and creating, pooling everybody's resources to create, because look,
because I was about to say that.
You know what I'm saying? What if everybody pooled their resources to have a in vogue moment, or a fucking, you remember a moment where, you know, where it's not necessarily a group, but it's a group project where
yes.
like Dolly Parton and Emmylou Harris and Linda Ronstadt did back in the day, where they were all separate artists, but they did a whole trio album where it was just them and they were all shining on the fucking whole project. And so why is shit like that not happening?
I think, well, I know personally, I'm glad you said it, because me and Jayla do have stuff in the works. And the great thing about that is that I've always been open to collaboration. Me and my other friend, Tayana, is a wonderful artist out here on the West Coast, Tayana Trends. We have some songs together that came out. I work with King David as a feature artist with his stuff, as you know. So I'm always open with, you know, my brother Hasizzle, bounce artist in New Orleans. I've been on his stuff. Like, so I'm always open to collaboration, but I also do know, for me, because I've always had to, and not to say that nobody else was having a Beyonce moment in that space, but I just know for me personally, I've never had my own unique safe space. And so every time I bring something out personally, like, which is so important about this EP, is that it was all from here and here. It had been waiting and building up, and I finally found the right space to, and I didn't want any distraction. I didn't want, you know, and so I just registered the work that I had to do, but I also paid attention to say, hey, if this is your first go round, you want to make sure that it's all you, so they can understand who you are as an artist, who you are as a songwriter, who you are as a performer, who you are as a thing. So I get that, but I also balance that out with, I'm always open to collaboration if it fits right. You know what I'm saying? Because my work ethic, my go get it, might not be for everybody. Because I'm a Virgo. If I tell you I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. If I don't do it, I'm not going to tell you I'm going to do it. I'm going to show you after the day, because I already made up in my mind and my heart that this is what I want to do. So gratefully, is that I have this manifested project, which is the embodiment, one of the embodiments of who I am, and show up how I show up as an artist with this EP. And even the rollout, like when you look at it, my first single that I ever put out, that one, into now this is my first EP, present, like structure-wise, visual-wise, vocal-wise, it's in alignment to, for me, of how the rollouts would be with, if they had the big machine behind them, visually, how it would look, aesthetically, how it would look. Like, it's professional enough to be like, this, okay, it's in a playlist with, right? Because that's what was so beautiful to me when my friends were supporting me, and the people who would support me, they were sending the things of how they would hang it next to the established artists in that space. And I'm like, bitch, like, you can't tell me that don't look good next to no motherfucking Mariah Carey cover. You can't tell me that don't look good next to that John Legend cover. You can't tell me. And then they press play and jamming it, and I'm like, wow, that does come into my spirit, because I remember that little child in that room just saying, one day I'm gonna get in the class, I'm gonna get in the group, just so I can get in the group. Let me get in the group. Let me show that example of, like, we can do it. We don't have to, like I know that they've always wanted us to do it. It don't have to just be in dance. It don't have to just be in EDM. It don't have to be that. It could be R&B and soul, because we know those individuals existed in that space. And so that's why I always challenge myself when I would be at home of like, no, baby, you give me a mic and then turn it on, or you give me somebody with a piano or a little electric guitar like everybody else get, who are so-say singers, I'll battle you, not even battle, I'll stand next to you and hold my own. And so that's what I take with me in my artistry of like, no, this is mine.
So let's talk about the EP.
Yeah.
So this EP is a very soulful EP, and it's called Present. And it has 5 songs on it. It is soul, some fun, tell me, shake it, inspiration. My favorite song on the EP is Tell Me.
Okay.
That's my favorite song. I do love soul. I do love the inspiration, just how you because I'm a chamber singer type ass bitch, and so when people do those type of things where one part is doing this, one part is doing that, and it's coming together like a choral, that's my shit. So yeah, that's my sick. And so I thought that was beautiful, especially you're giving honor to some of those artists that influenced you, that influenced me, and I was like, oh, I love that she's doing this. So tell me about just how did you get in that space to create this and birthing this out? What was the inspiration for some of the numbers? And tell me about it.
Yes, I knew that. Thank you for just especially for someone who is musically inclined and as their own artist, it does wonders to the soul to hear that how people take it in and interpret in their own space. And I give them freedom to do that. And that's the wonderful thing about when you know your job is done, when you know you have done your best and you give that to the world. It's like, oh no, baby, I know I showed up for myself in this project because, baby, by the reaction of what people tell me, not just on the mirror that they know me, just saying, oh my God, I like that. That sounds good. Ooh, that's a banker. I like that. And so for me, it was, and there's the issue. I'm gonna get personal in that, but even more personal. It was the anxiety of believing that I would never have an opportunity to even bring this forth. I was thinking the lifetime clock is running out. I'm gonna get murdered. I'm gonna get, you know what I'm saying? I'm like, girl, you need to do not rushing God. But just I was in this. I had my blinders on of like, I gotta get this out. And some of those songs were maybe some of the lyrical structures were already there in my archive. I just didn't have a safe space to build them out. And so that meant the lyrical structure and what I want to talk about, all that kind of stuff. The melody was there always in my archives, but I just didn't have time or a safe space once again to build it out. I found that. I sent that out in the universe and said, God, this is what I'm looking for. I'm going to find maybe somebody most definitely film presenting in the queer space, producer-wise, co-production-wise. And I found that with the individual, that they're in the queer space, Black, and they recognize what I want to do, and they signed on to help me bring that forth. And so it was I think we spent maybe the latter part of that 2019 of really honing it out every weekend or every day when I get off of work, or when I would have free time, we would set up studio time and we would hash out the creation and the production and what I'm envisioning, what their interpretation is. I always want to have a co-collab. I'm always inspired by the Missy and the Tims, the Sean and the production company. I'm always inspired by that. And so that's what I was really looking for, to hear how somebody's thought process of when I brought them that melody structure, say, well, have you ever thought about that way? And I was like, oh, well, it might work that way, and so we would build upon, and so I found a producer, Upper Reality, out here in LA, and they have their own unique sound, and we just collabed with some of the foundation things that I had, and we came and built that out. And then that was the process. And just really making sure that I showed up in all of it and was the center of that, because I know for some of us in that space, we kind of like close in, but it's like, oh shit, now I gotta really be vulnerable in expressing the truth of my existence. And so what you hear in every song, in every interpretation, is me. The source, that's why I say and so that I'm the source, because it comes from me. And so everything that person hears is what I had already interpreted in my mind and my spirit. And then I gave it, thankfully I had a safe space to help interpret that messaging, so that when you hear that first roll on soul, you're like, oh shit. You know, and then when you hear the beat structure, the 4-beat intro structure, is paying homage to Pharrell, because that's how he always opens his on some fun. And then, you know, on Tell Me, I wanted to infuse that island thing, but keep it hip hop, but keep it more so infused jazz component, but still pay homage. To me, that reminded me of Jasmine Sullivan's I Need You Bad. So I wanted to play upon that in a certain space of just paying respect. Like you said, that interlude, I had it for maybe in my archive, I think maybe over 10 years. The way they came in was the way they influenced me. Of course, we know Erica started that whole thing of like, and of course, Texas, of course, like how interconnected I understood this woman, and at that time she infused all that stuff. And so when I heard it, boom, 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 boom,
yeah,
boom,
right.
boom, you know, and you can flow, you can rap over there, you can sing over there, you can improv over there. And so that's what influenced me when I heard it. So I wanted to pay homage. And then when you heard the sensuality of motherfucking Jill Scott, and you knew, I was like, oh my God, it's this woman talking. She just made me feel
and also Jill incorporated, when we talked about earlier how we had those like classical influence. Jill don't mind give you an operatic too, baby. She don't mind. She's gonna give you that soulful. She's gonna give you that that wordsmith. She's gonna give you that lyric. I love a bitch that can write, who got a pen game. That's why Jill's Jasmine Sullivan is one of my favorites, because I'm way more prouder of being a writer and what I create, what my lyrical content is, because as a person who is going to speak to the experience of trans people, unless it's us writing our story. Yeah, we can kind of write songs that purposely say, oh, well, we don't want to talk about you know, stuff like this because that kind of alienate us. But who is going to write about our experience, and how can we do it in a way that's relatable to all of people? Just like, you know, I don't write songs. I don't know shit about Alanis Morissette's life other than what she told me, but I still related to her songs. I'm not some white woman from Canada, but how she delivered the song was such relatable in her writing. And I'm like, how can I do that, still being true to my transness, and still you know, creating this moment of relatability without totally like selling out and just being too clean and too, you know, what I love about your writing is that it gives I can visualize my own personal experience as a trans woman in what you're talking about. When you were talking about getting the rug burns on your knees, and when we talk about, you know, all these kind of things that you know, a nigga, you said you that nigga. So show me, like, how. But now when you alone with me, it's a whole different situation. I gotta be the aggressor. Now you shy. Now you scared. You know, those little moments of truth, and you know, that's what I loved about the album and about what you brought forth in it. Let me ask you some questions about your delivery.
Yes.
And so when I listen to you, I hear a very agile falsetto, and you seem to stay in that pocket. And so is that intentional? Or because and this is not saying that you're doing it, but I know me, when I was coming up creating, I would be like, ooh, my voice is too low. Somebody might think I sound like a man and da 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 da. So maybe if I just always sing in my falsetto, then, you know, it would be soft enough to be palatable. Why do you choose to deliver your songs in that kind of in that more agile falsetto place in your voice? Why is that a conscious decision?
I think I've always known that it was more relaxed for me to explore that space. In that lower register, because it can go there. I have freedom to go there in a certain capacity. But how I've always known it from my adolescence to where I'm at now, that part has never changed. Like when we talk about the break and the, you know, all that type of stuff, that's why I have a pushback. Of course, at that time, they based it on it coming from the male perspective of like, oh, that's a false, it's less than, it's like, you know, and so that also triggered me in how I showed up in my identity. Because it's like, well, girl, how they gonna take, number one, you a trans woman, which means they gonna already view you as a false woman. Then you gonna start singing in this voice naturally that you have space to you. It's easy.
Good rocking in this baritone.
Or then you can, because for me, going into the lower range is more forceful of trying to reach, even with all the studying. And so that's why I was like, well, girl, you should do. And then in understanding it, I said, fuck it all. You do what naturally, freely comes from you. And so I know uniquely the way my voice is supported in the meat of it, in the middle, you know, people perceive it as false, that whatever that is to them. But I just know if in that case, my false is like nobody else's false. So the thing that I naturally can do, the range of where I can go and intertwine my low levels is the freedom that I've just always known. And so I had to get out of the structured definition of what they say. Oh, well, this is compartment and confinement that you can only express this in that space. Or this is that. And I was like, well, fuck all that. If it feels good to me, I can do it. I can support it. And it feels good to me and how I show up. Then that's why I deliver in that way. And it was more so from that space of the classical space of like understanding, because I was trained as a countertenor. That's the other thing. Right. I was trained as a countertenor in my undergraduate space. And I was like, well, no, child, I'm not about to be no countertenor because clearly you're already policing me and how I show up as this countertenor. And yes, it might be lucrative, yeah, but that's still not, I'm not playing in that game. So I knew I had to break away from those type of specific titles and understanding, oh, child, that's not me. I know I can reach those notes. You allow me to reach those notes, I'm going to reach those notes. And so that was my way of advocating for myself. And then I would always challenge people when they say, oh, well, you use your falsetto a lot. And I was like, what's false about it? You know, I would always have that pushback. It was like, yes, that was the term and everything, you know, understanding those type of things. I was like, well, no, uniquely, there's certain limits that you hear with falsettos that I know that, child, I run circles around. And it's like, I don't even want to get in that space of like, no, you break away from it and you just deliver your song or you deliver your interpretation and you deliver your voice uniquely how God wanted, because that's what they gave to you. And so that's why, you know, even if, you know, if it's a choice, yes. But for the most part, it's just like, no, that's what uniquely has always felt comfortable since I was an adolescent to where I'm at now. That has not changed. Of course, it gets stronger. Of course, it gets, you know, you're able to learn more, educate yourself more, but that's always been the foundation.
Well, like you said, you wear it out. Whatever the voice you're serving, it is giving what needs to be gave. So before we close out, I want to ask you one last question, and you know, I want you to tell me who would be your dream collaborations. Who are some of your, if you, just on an artistry level. Now, of course, if you want to make some coins, you would pick Beyonce. And, not that she's not a great artist, but on an artistry level, who you think that you would just make an amazing song with, amazing collaboration with. Give me three people. Give me three people that you...
Artist side or producer?
Give me two artists and one producer.
Whew. Of course, most definitely
Brandy.
Of course.
The Vocal Bible.
Yes. Major influence to me. The other person, oh my God. Producer-wise, knew I would want to be in the D-Mile camp. D-Mile, oh my God, what he's doing with Lucky Day, what he's doing with Victoria Monet, what he's doing with, he understands how to craft that sound around that artist. And I'm just like, yo, if I would get in that fucking studio with that, I got chills, like if I get in the studio with that man, and he get me in front of that mic, like, I know he would be like, what the fuck? That's just my ambition for that. Other artists, I would definitely probably say Kanye. I would definitely want to work with Jasmine. I definitely want to work with Jasmine because I just know I got that agility, that fluidity, to where I could, of course, do me. I'm not saying I would even compete. I was just saying I can stand next to it.
Right.
And so that's the understanding of like, oh, no. Let me get in there. Let's craft this thing. Let's see how this goes. So currently, those two, as far as their, of course, the respect for Brandy, but then, of course, the freshness and the way she writes, the way she plays on the cadence for Jasmine, the way that I loved it. And D-Mile's production is just, mwah.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you for your time. You are definitely inspiration for me. I think you are an amazing artist. I love hearing your voice. I am always going to, as soon as you drop something, I'm buying it. Soon as I'm sharing it. It's just, that is who I am. But it ain't just me trying to, stay in what's happening in the it crowd just because I have a media platform. It is because as an artist myself and as a trans singer myself, seeing somebody out here fucking doing it, it is beautiful to me and I love it. Thank you so much for your existence.
And I thank you so much for continually being that influence and continue like paving the way. Like I always make sure that I love what I do. I love my community. I love the intersections of it all. I love our Blackness because we can only do it. Black people only do it just how we do it. And the specialness of being Black and queer and being Black and, like, for some other, it's like we still have a certain of how we show up in everything we do. And so I just, like you said, I'm just so inspired to see what's coming for, I say, the dolls in 2022 and beyond, because we're seeing now that door is widening. That space is being open. And I know that even in the music space, that's what I want to champion, because I know my life is that I want to see that Grammy Award winning artists that just like
I want to see what's happening in the actress space with the trans women happen in the artist space.
And I know that not a lot has been championed in that space. And so if not, I want to be in a group. And I'm not saying that I have to be the only one, because I know I'm not going to be, because that's just not my mentality. But what my focus is making sure that I continue to put out credible art, so where the people, when they find me, and when they find more of me, they be like, oh, this bitch, she got good music. So they can't find nothing. They be like, ooh, girl, she recorded it this kind of like that. No, when you press play, you're going to hear the respect quality of the craft and understanding. Give us space or give us more opportunities, and I'll show you what I can do even more. And so I'm just thankful and blessed to have individuals like yourself who give up the individuals platforms to actually open somebody's mind to understanding and seeing another artist that they might not have seen before. And so I'm just thankful for you and your platform and what you do and who you are, just being, and the coolness that you give. And I've always seen you and always respected you. And I'm just glad that organic, like I said, we meshed like that. And so I just thank you for the time. And I look forward to more.
Hey, so make sure I'm gonna link her EP down in the bottom. She's on all streaming platforms, so you can just search Neverending Nina. Her EP is called Present. Actually, one of my favorite songs, it's not on the album, but my favorite songs is by you is Love Me Right. Love Me Right is my sickening. It's so sick.
And don't think I ever forgot I was waiting the right time to post, because and that's the other thing, I just made the video. So I'm trying to see how I can, put that cross promotion there with, the thing that you gave me.
That was my jam. It made me feel sexy. I was in San Francisco and it had came on because I had downloaded from SoundCloud, and it had came up on my playlist. Just how sometimes your computer just play random songs, and I was like, "Oh, this Nina, this is my signature. That was my shit." So make sure y'all check that out too. That's on her SoundCloud. Yes. But yeah, just check her out. Put her on in your playlist. Put her on whatever you got. Music artists, make sure you support your folks out here. Nina, tell the people where they can find you.
You can find me everywhere using Neverending Nina. That's on all social media platforms. You can go to everywhere you download music, like my good sister Donna said. Type in Neverending Nina. Every avenue, YouTube, everywhere you can download. Of course, we like iTunes in the place where you can download and support the artists, support independent artistry. Give me my coin now. I ain't asking a lot, but give me my coin. But find me on everything Neverending Nina across the social media platforms.
And I will have all of that linked in the bottom. And thank you all for listening. Have a wonderful day.
You can listen to the rest of the show on all podcast platforms. Just search Marsha's Plate. See you there.